Hey guys, TheAirsoftTech here, and welcome back. So the other day I was going gun by gun, doing some inventory and gun maintenance on my whole airsoft gun collection. Now I got done with every single gun and everything looked pretty good, and then I got to my ICS L86 here, and then I realized I probably haven't worked on this thing in 4 or 5 years. And pretty much all I knew about it was that it cycled and put a BB downrange, and that was about it. So with that knowledge, I got super excited to do a whole rebuild of the entire gun. But that's not really what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about some AOE misconceptions, because when I opened up this gun, I realized that I corrected AOE an old, outdated, and improper way. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today, how to actually properly correct angle of engagement, and a slight misconception that some people have when correcting AOE, and why that is actually a bad method. All right, so we have the ICS L86 gearbox shell taken apart before us. This gearbox is actually assembled backwards. Just the screw threads are on the opposite side that they would normally be on. So it is what it is. Just an interesting fact about this gearbox shell. Anyway, a couple misconceptions with AOE. Whenever I opened up this gun, like I said, I hadn't opened it up for probably 4 or 5 years. I noticed one major thing that I did incorrectly, and I did the other things appropriately, but I did this one major thing incorrectly. And you can tell that there's a failure point being created here, and there's obvious signs of wear and tear because of that improper method that I used. So back to basics with AOE. The point of AOE is to obtain a appropriate angle of engagement with your first gear tooth on your sector gear and your pickup tooth on your piston. Now, you want this angle to be as flat as possible. Sometimes that's 12 o'clock, sometimes that's 1 o'clock, sometimes that's 12:30 or 12:15. The first misconception that people make is that it's always 12 o'clock. And in reality, it's 12 o'clock, 12:15, 12:30, 1 o'clock. It just depends on wherever your sector gear tooth contacts that pickup tooth at the flattest angle. So for this, you can kind of tell it's about 12:10, 12:15. Not exactly 12 o'clock like some people say you should always aim for. Now, I'm saying 12 o'clock, 12:15, you're saying what's the difference? It's pretty much the same either way. And for the most part, you might be right, the difference might be negligible, but in a high performance build that is cycling 70 or 60 times a second, you don't really have room for error. Now this build is not doing that, but I've always been of the idea that if you're going to do something, you do it as perfect as you can. There's no, second best in my mind. You always should do your best work, and that includes AOE. And so that's the first misconception that people make, is that it's always at 12 o'clock, when in reality it could be at 12:15, 12:30, or a 1 o'clock position, to obtain that perfectly flat angle so that you don't put as much stress on the pickup tooth as you would otherwise. The second misconception that people make is that they try to correct angle of engagement by using a sorbothane pad. And that's fine and all. You can use a sorbothane pad all you want, but the problem is that people who use sorbothanes tend to not install the spring back in when checking their angle of engagement with said sorbothane. So what is sorbo? Sorbo is a kind of soft, pliable, semi-type of rubber material that squishes and dampens impact so that the front of your gearbox shell is spared some of the stress that the spring creates up against it. Now for version 2s, this is fairly important, especially for the weaker ones out there. But for heavy duty, gearbox shells like this one, or a version 3 or a version 6 or even version 7, you really don't need to worry about dampening the blow of your spring. So if you do choose to use sorbothane, remember to install your spring, because under normal circumstances, the AOE and the sorbothane is going to squish as that spring is installed, so that's going to throw your angle off. And so always check your AOE with the spring installed to actually show that corrected form of where the sorbothane is going to sit. And so that's, the second misconception that I feel like a lot of people make. So the way I get around this is that I just don't use sorbothane anymore. I don't even use it on version 2 builds. I tend to use these plastic washers that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot or MC Master Car. You can get them all kinds of places. They're fairly lightweight, they're pretty darn strong, and they shouldn't break anytime soon, and they do the job of correcting AOE. Now, I like to correct AOE between the piston and the piston head because this allows for me to take advantage of extra mass and not lose as much effective volume as you would if you were to correct an angle of engagement off of the cylinder head with a faucet washer or sorbothane. Regardless, you're losing volume here. But by doing this method, you're retaining some mass, therefore weight, therefore effective volume, essentially. Using this method, you keep your joule output a little higher than you would if you were to use faucet washers or even sorbothane. So that's enough about the second misconception. The third misconception, which tends to be the most detrimental for your AOE, is what I did in this case. We'll take the piston back out. What I did in this case is what you should normally do. We'll start with what you should normally do. Is you should remove the second to last tooth completely to make room for the sector gear's first tooth to actually hit the pickup tooth appropriately. And then you should only partially remove the third to last tooth. Now, you remove these teeth obviously because you're spacing back the piston, therefore, you're changing the angle at which the sector gear hits the piston with. And when you do this, you have to remove those teeth. And so some people do it incorrectly and they remove both of those teeth there. And what this does is it puts a lot of stress in a very focal point of stress on this pickup tooth. And you can kind of see that. Make sure everything's in appropriately. Yep. You can kind of see that. Okay, we get appropriate angle of engagement, but what's happening is when the sector gear is picking up and shoving that piston back, it doesn't quite pick up on that fourth to last tooth, you see, until it's already almost off of that pickup tooth. And what that's doing is that's putting a lot of stress on that pickup tooth. And so over time, it can cause this flexing phenomenon right here on the back rack of your pickup tooth here that holds the whole rack in place. And it can actually blow that out. And you can kind of already see that. The metal rack is bending, the back of the piston is bowing out. These are signs of stress concentration on the pickup tooth. Now that's all avoidable if you just partially remove the third to last tooth, which is what I've done here. This is my DMR's piston from my ICS M16. So this piston looks great. The pickup tooth looks fine. There's no bowing at the back of the rack support there. But on this, you see all those features. And so this is the appropriate way to remove teeth, whereas this is the inappropriate way to remove teeth. So a little bit of backstory behind this piston setup here. I posted a picture of this AOE setup on Instagram, Facebook, and the YouTubes. And I had a couple people commenting saying, what's the big deal? Clearly it works fine, and clearly it'll work fine in stock setups, so what's the big deal? And to that I kind of say, again, why not just do the best job you can possibly do? This is concentrating a failure point at the beginning of the piston setup. And for high performance builds like DSGs, DMRs, LMGs, and SSGs, it tends to fail. And I've seen it fail. I've seen it fail even with SEMA, really nice SEMA pistons and Lonex pistons, especially Lonex reds and blue pistons that have the plastic pickup tooth area. It just tends to fail, especially in these high performance builds. So if it fails in those high performance builds a lot of the times, then the chances of it failing in these stock setups is fairly low, but it's still there. And so I wouldn't play that roulette. I would just correct angle of engagement the appropriate way by fully removing the second to last tooth and partially removing the third to last tooth. But I am going to continue running this piston until it breaks. I'm going to run it into the ground, and if it breaks, awesome, I'll replace it. If it doesn't break, also awesome, I won't replace it. But I have a feeling that it will, as evidenced by the damage that is currently being done. Alright guys, that's going to have to do it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel for more AirsoftTech themed content. And if you don't mind, please like this video and comment down below. It definitely helps lift this video to the top of the AirsoftTech themed YouTube algorithm, if there is such a thing that technically exists. All I know is that it helps out my videos. And for those who are wanting a full breakdown of this ICS L86 build, don't worry, there will be a full video breakdown of what I did to it and the performance of it as well in the future, coming soon. Alright, but I will see you guys in the next video of whatever the heck I'm doing. Until then, stay tuned, techs.